Hello, this is Ward. I know, it's been a long time since I've posted a video, but the good news is I'm now working with Reallusion, writing a weekly column for Reallusion Magazine. I'll be covering everything from iClone how-tos, tips, tricks, video tutorials, product reviews, interviews, experimentation, just about anything that has to do with iClone and Character Creator. This initial tutorial, Kitbashing a simple robot body, is broken down into several parts, and a lot of you will get a quick grasp of what to do after just a few pieces are put together. The video is structured to where you can watch it all the way through or skip through to places that interest you. There is also a 4-speed run-through of putting the robot together at the end of this clip if you want to skim through the process. I hope you'll join me in Reallusion Magazine for something new each week. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Hit that notification bell for new content. So, let's get started. So from here, I'm just going to drag the asset over, the FBX version, drop it in as a prop. It's going to be very small, but we're just going to go ahead and build it small. Then we'll scale it up once we get ready to skin it. And so all I'm doing now is just highlighting it so we can see it. Now we're going to clean this up a little bit. It's got a lot of dummies with it. Some of these sets do. You can just select each one and work with them or send them to iClone and it'll isolate them. But we're just going to go ahead and open up each one of these and select the mesh. You can tell there that it's not the mesh because you can't do anything with it. But you select the sub item and you have all your mesh controls. So we want to extract those meshes since we don't have very many here. This probably wouldn't be practical in a bigger set. But what we're going to do is just select just the meshes themselves. Then we're going to go over and click detach, even though it doesn't look like it's attached to anything. And you'll see what I mean here. Go ahead and click it, and there it detached it. Now we can come in and delete the dummies. After we've deleted the dummies, then we have each individual item to work with. We can rename them now or as we work with them. So we might as well get started. And what I see here is a robot leg. And so let's take another look at it. I think with the mesh tool, we can probably make that work. If you don't like the little pogo part that's on the bottom, I think we can probably push that up into it. And I'll show you what I mean. But yeah, I think this will work pretty good. We'll go ahead and edit mesh and we'll go to vertex. And then let's select as high up as we can get without getting the bottom of what may be the shoe or the foot. You'll see what I mean here in a second. I'm just going to pull that up inside. Then I'm going to scale it down to where it doesn't stick out. And that takes that out of sight. Now I'm just going to alter this a little. We're going to lengthen it. Now I'm just going to pull it out. And there we've lengthened it. And there is our lower leg and foot of our robot. And we'll build up one leg, and then we'll just duplicate it for the other leg. Okay, let me just tweak this, make sure that we're at 90 degrees. And yeah, I think that will work. Probably ought to go ahead and turn it around the other way so that we can get used to working with it in a forward-facing direction. Again, check and make sure I'm on a minus 90 directly. Move it over here. Move it down. And we're ready to keep building. Now we need a knee. And it looks like that's about the closest thing as we're going to have to a knee. Some of you may disagree. That's one thing about kitbashing. You can use whatever part you want to use. I'm just going to line this up. Of course, we'll eventually get it lined up in all the axes. And I'm going to want to resize it, rescale it down a little bit for my taste. But right now, just going to kind of place it right there, scale her down, bring her up, and take a look at her. Again, continue to place it. Now, some of you may not like that pogo look there either. You can just cover it up like that. But I'm going to place mine right about there. And I'm going to say that that's a knee. And one thing we need to do that I haven't been doing is rename these as we go. And we'll call this lower leg. Now we know what we're working with. Okay, now we need to find an upper leg. I think that right there will work pretty good. We'll get it maneuvered into place. Get it rotated. Don't think I particularly like that. That part right there is the top. Let me move it in place a little more. Probably going to rotate that around. Yeah, because it's got a rounded edge at the other end, which would probably look better attached to the hip, to the pelvis. So let's go ahead and rotate that over. Make sure that we're aligned properly. And then we'll go ahead and move it back down. And if you want your leg longer, this would be the time to stretch it. I'm not going to be perfect about it. Just going to kind of eyeball it. And you probably could use a line on this. I'm just old school. And do it from looking at it. Then we'll rename it. And that's it. I think we'll use this piece right here. See what it looks like once I get it into place. Just bear with me. You'll see what I'm doing. I'm going to rotate it around and scale it out, stretch it out from side to side. We'll just, let's see, yeah. Kind of go to where between two legs would be. Scale that out. And I think that'll work for a pelvis. Might want to make it a little thicker, just depends. Okay, rename it. Now, let's attach this leg part together so we can duplicate it easier. Let's see, what do we have? We got upper leg, lower leg, and knee. I think I will attach the other two to the upper leg. So we'll deselect upper leg, and then we'll attach to it. That gives us the leg in one piece, which then we can use Alt and move. I'm sorry, Control and move. And set our legs like we want them. Looks like we're going to have to do a little bit of work on the pelvis, not quite wide enough. Scale it out. This is all just personal preference here. Move that out to the edge. And I think I will go ahead and scale this pelvis up a little. And I think we pretty much have the bottom part of our Kitbash robot right there. Now let's find the lower torso. I think that'll work just fine. Moving into position. Scale it up. See how it fits. Let's see, move that up a little. Now we'll check it out and see what it looks like. That looks like a lower torso to me. Get it lined up a little better, and that'll work. Now we'll move to an upper torso. And you may have a different idea of a robot. You may only have one body piece or multiple body pieces. Again, this is Kitbashing. You can do that however you think you can rig it in Character Creator 4. So, what I'm going to do here is get her scaled up and in position. Keeping in mind that this is like the chest, the upper torso. I want it a bit wider, but not quite as tall. Get her lined up a little better. Then we'll scale her up and squash her back down in height. And see what happens. Alright. Hit and scale her up. And scale it back down on that axis. Rename it upper torso, or you can name it chest. Do a little housekeeping here, I forgot to name that. Lower torso. And we're done. Now we need a shoulder, or two shoulders I should say. Let me get this moved into place. Get it rotated. And make sure we're on a good 90 degrees. Then put her in position. And now we'll want to duplicate that for the other side. Hold down Alt. Then after this, we will go ahead and roll it over. Again, make sure we're on a good 90 degrees. Move her in place. That looks pretty good. Rename them. Rename the other one. this part. Now we need an upper arm. Out of everything that's left, this is a good candidate. And of course you could duplicate other parts, like parts of the legs or something, if you wanted to use them. But I think I'm just going to line this up and use this as the upper arm. Move her into place. And see how that looks. That looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and pick an elbow, get it in place, and get it scaled to what we need. This will be a fairly simple task, just making sure I have it on a good angle. Now we'll get her lined up and scaled. Again, some of this is just personal preference. Go ahead and scale her up a little more. And there's our elbow. And while we're here, grab the upper arm. Hold down the control button and duplicate it for our lower arm. Now we can use this last piece as a wrist. This is again not something that you have to do. I've just found when attaching hands from places like Sketchfab, it's better to have something that's a little wider than a narrow arm. Of course, you could also use a flattened cylinder or anything like that, any kind of primitive, and just match the white or black color. But I'm just going to move this into place. And of course you can also get your robotic head at Sketchfab, make your own, or again make your own out of pieces of this kit. Depends on if you want the head to look humanoid or industrial. We'll get this situated, rename it. There's the wrist, widen it out a little bit, move it in place. And there's our wrist. Pretty much our complete arm. Okay, let's attach the lower arm and the wrist to the upper arm. And we don't want to forget the elbow. Make sure it's all attached. That way, we can go ahead and use Control Move, duplicate it, rotate her around, make sure we've got a good rotation. Go to 270. Now we'll line her up on the other two axes. Get her lined up with the other shoulder. Looks like we're almost there. Right there. Now, there's most of the body. Now let's get to optimization. I did not do this as we built it because it would have just made that process even more tedious, and we wanted to get through that part without distraction. So what we're going to do now is go through and decimate this using, of course, our built-in tool, InstantLOD. Now that we've got our character laid out, I would just go ahead and delete. That way you won't have to decimate it. Because what you need to do is go through each part of this mesh and use InstantLOD. And like in these cases, I'm going to go to 5,000. Now we're not going to go through every one of these. I'm just going to show you a few. Most of the parts I used 5,000. And that includes the upper parts of the arm, things like that. Just remember though that you have to do each one by itself. And then in this case, like here, I went ahead and did 5,000 on this. And now on the pelvis, you can go ahead and lower that to 3,000. Now you can shave off more than I did here, but I'm not going to take you through this whole process. I'll just jump over to the already optimized model. So here we have the optimized model at almost 89K versus 2.6 million. And of course, what I did was just duplicate the arm and rotate it around, duplicate the leg. And to me, this is not a bad poly count to have when you consider what you came from. And you could go back and shave off some more because you're still going to have to add a head and 2 hands. But as far as being able to shave it down, if your computer can't handle it, then you may have to optimize as you build. And that really preferably is probably the way to go. But just for this tutorial, I broke it down into 2 pieces so that part wouldn't be so long. Okay, I've added a regular size character so we can see how much we need to scale up to. So let's go ahead and center it. Move our pivot point down to the bottom. Scale it up. And that's really the only reason I have this guy here. And then I noticed something. It doesn't look right. Well, that's because I kind of squished it. So we need to pull this axis back out. Probably something like that. There we go. That looks a lot better. Now we'll go into AccuRIG. Let us create its guides. Now I know we don't have a head or hands on here. I'm just going to show you how to rig the body. You can get the head at SketchUp, the hands at SketchUp, make your own. Now what I'm going to do, instead of moving that, I'm just going to leave that. What I'm going to do is move these down to where the pelvis won't move. We don't want that pelvis twisting. If you want the legs to be completely stiff, you could mask out these bones. But right now we're just setting the markers, and that's all I'm going to do is just move those. So let's go ahead and go to 0 fingers, generate skeleton. Okay, let's pick our lower neck bone, turn on our mask and mask from there up. Now I also, just to make sure, let's click our pelvis, turn on our mask. You notice that masks everything down. We'll just click on one of the bones below it, turn them on. Now I like to do the same thing up here. I'm not really sure sometimes how much good we're doing, but I turn it on, and then I grab one of the other bones. Turn it off, and we're masking those parts. Now let's bind the skin. And you could do some more tweaking here. But you got to remember also, this is a robot. When you take it in to use animation, you may have to lock some parts down or use animation layers, because it's not going to move organically unless you want it to. Okay. And now we're rigged. Here we are in iClone 8. So as you can see, this pile of parts can become a rigged character pretty quickly. All it takes is just enough imagination to see how you can make something out of that pile of parts. And somebody else, another creator, can take the same pile of parts and make a totally different robot out of it. Anyway, I'm sorry this was a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but I hope this helps.